Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Crystal. Let's see, I need to turn up my audio. Okay, there we go. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm losing my voice a bit.
Oh no, okay.
I'm just getting over a cold. So I'm going to do my best.
Okay, yeah, let us know what we can do. We'll just have a lot of discussion. Well, we can start using the chat, whatever we need to do.
I'm hoping it's going to loosen up. I hope the tea will loosen it up.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure it doesn't help that it's 5:30 in the morning there, and I would have just rolled out of bed, so I really appreciate you doing this. It looks like you're already starting to get a nice crowd on, so I think we'll have a good group today. Folks, we'll get started in about 6 minutes. Crystal, do you want to try sharing your screen just to make sure that we have that all set? You know what? I think I probably have to give you host. I'm making you a co-host. Okay, there we go. Okay, looks good. Looks good. So you can keep it shared or stop the share, whatever you want to do. Did you have a nice holiday?
I was really sick.
Oh, sorry, and I won't make you talk too much before we start.
No, I think the talking will help.
Okay. So for those of you who haven't been on a Zoom call in a while or haven't happened to be on one of our Zoom webinars from one of our courses in the past, you bring your cursor down. If you're on a computer, if you bring your cursor down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, then you should find a little chat button, and you can click that and you can chat to everyone, or you can just chat to individual people on the call. And we'll be using the chat throughout the call to, if you have questions, I'll be monitoring the chat. So while Crystal is speaking, you are welcome to chat questions, and I'll try and keep track of those as best I can. Okay. Were you in California for the holidays?
Yes. How was yours?
It was nice. We had a little bit of illness, but not quite as much as last year, so that was good. Last year it was like we were on one of those norovirus cruise ships and everybody went down. So yeah, it's much better this year. In Massachusetts with my we do Christmas with everybody, my in-laws, my parents, my brother, his boyfriend, my brother-in-law and his girlfriend. Like, it's just everybody comes to one place, and it's a big to-do.
Oh, you meant those holidays.
Oh yeah.
I meant
the MLK holidays. Yeah. Sorry, I guess I'm still living in the past. Is it really the end of January?
Yeah. Face it. Time to face it.
Oh no, these holidays we were totally snowed in here in Ithaca. My husband's in China, and we spent the whole. I have a 2.5-year-old, and so she and I just spent the whole weekend inside together. I tried to get her to go outside and play, and like brought maple syrup out to eat snow, pour maple syrup on snow and eat it, and she was not at all interested. After about 5 minutes, was just like, "Mommy, I's so cold, Mommy." Okay. We'll go in.
I'm gonna grab some more hot water.
Sounds good.
Okay.
For those of you who are just arriving, we're going to be starting in just a few minutes. And if you haven't joined us on Zoom for a while, or you need a little bit of a Zoom refresher, you can, while Crystal Chissell is speaking, you're welcome to chat questions. We'll have everybody on mute, and so we'll use the chat for most of the questions, at least for during the presentation. And you can go to the bottom right-hand corner or right-hand side of your Zoom menu. You can click the chat, and you can chat with one person, or you can chat with everybody, and I'll be trying to monitor those chat questions as we go through. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. Let's see. Yeah, and if you'd like to say, oh, I forgot about that. Somebody just introduced themselves in the chat. Oh, hi, Maxwell. Maxwell has taken several of our courses, is a really active member of our of several of our course pages from Zimbabwe. Subash, welcome, Subash. And I'm going to go through and try and mute. Let's see if I can see this a little better. Got some folks. Please make sure that you're muted if you can. There we go. Okay. Hi, Peter. It's great to have you again. Okay. Yeah, I think we've got everybody. Stop some of that feedback. Good morning, Lee. Please, it would be fun to see where everybody's coming in from. So, so if you can type where you're coming from, that would also be great. So I'll type in the. Peter, all right, you're in Ghana, Peter. And Jan from Denver, welcome back. Mana from Rosendale. I've been to Rosendale. Melanie from Long Island, welcome. We had some Lee from Malaysia living in Ithaca. Hello, John Bowman from Cornell Lab. This is great. We've got a nice group of people here. Lisa from West Chazy. I have a family up in Plattsburgh. Southern Illinois, Albany, Nepal, DC, Manhattan. Richard from New Orleans. All right, so a little bit warmer than Ithaca probably. Okay, so it is, according to my clock, 8:30, so we will go ahead and get started. Crystal, I'm going to unmute you, and I just wanted to welcome Crystal Chissell from Project Drawdown, who has been gracious enough to do a webinar for us about Project Drawdown and the work that this amazing organization and group of people has done in putting together a list of the top 100 solutions to climate change and starting to do some education programs and education movement around that. And I also wanted to say this is like the sort of the first in what we are hoping will become a series of webinars on climate change run in partnership by the Civic Ecology Lab and the Cornell Institute for Climate Smart Solutions. So we will be meeting with Danielle Eisman from Cornell Institute for Climate Smart Solutions later this week, and we'll be putting together a whole schedule. So we'll be sending that out to people. I think most people seem to be doing okay with audio, but we've got a couple who don't, so I'll deal with that in just a second. This will be recorded, and we'll try and post this up as soon as we can on YouTube. And if we have any folks from China, I'll work with our Chinese our Chinese contingent in our lab to get that available on WeChat. Okay, so, and for those of you who don't know me, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Annie Armstrong. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Natural Resources at Cornell University in the Civic Ecology Lab. And I think many of you have taken our online climate change science communication and action course, in which I'm a lecturer and one of the main facilitators. So great to see so many familiar names. I can't say faces yet, but on the call, and really looking to our discussion today. So, Crystal, without further ado, I will hand it over to you. And oh, sorry, one more thing. Crystal, it is 5:30 in the morning where Crystal is, and so I just want us all to give her a big thank you for being here so early to do this presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I have to apologize for voice and the super bad timing for me to lose my voice, but I think if I try to speak in a low register, it'll be okay. So bear with me. Maybe we'll loosen up. So drawdown. You can see my slides, right?
Yep.
Drawdown is the time when concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere begin to decline year to year. And Project Drawdown is an organization founded in California to focus on 3 objectives. I gotta get my slides to go.
Yeah, sometimes you have to like click down to the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, little cursors will come up. Sorry.
So the first objective, to make drawdown a key goal for humanity and a focus for worldwide climate action. So rather than slowing the rise of greenhouse gases, we propose an ambitious goal to stop and reverse the rise of concentrations of greenhouse gases. The second objective of Project Drawdown is to change the worldwide conversation about climate. So we want to reframe communication about global warming from a message of threat and fear to a message of possibility and opportunity. For decades, scientists have done an excellent job of describing the problem. But unfortunately, constant messages about this huge problem of global warming tend to be overwhelming and lead people to feel overwhelmed and then discouraged, and then to be in denial, then to be apathetic and uninterested in the problem. So what we want to add to the conversation is a discussion about solutions. And we also want to communicate in positive ways about climate. So we avoid violent and military language such as fight climate change or battle, war on, or combat. Because what we need now is to work in harmony with the earth and its natural processes and not to wage a war or treat our climate as the enemy. And the third objective of Project Drawdown is to determine if it's actually possible to achieve drawdown by 2050 by using existing and proven solutions, knowledge that humanity already has on hand. So to accomplish this goal, we brought together a team of 65 researchers from 22 countries on 6 continents to conduct this global collaborative research project on the best existing solutions to global warming. The result of that is this book, Drawdown, which is a New York Times bestseller, and it's a catalog of 80 existing and proven solutions and it projects their potential to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, as well as the cost to implement them. It reflects back to the world what the world is already doing. It includes a wide diversity of technologies and practices that range from usual suspects to the less known. So the book includes both technologies and practices that avoid sending greenhouse gases up into the atmosphere, as well as those that bring carbon back to Earth. Almost all of the solutions have multiple benefits. In most cases, the benefit to climate is the second, third, or even fourth benefit that this solution has. So we call them no regret solutions. They are things that we would want to do whether there was global warming or not, because they benefit people, health, the economy, jobs, etc. So in essence, what this research project does is show what's possible over a 30-year period. It shows the quantified emissions impact if these solutions are scaled from 2020 to 2050, and also shows the cost to implement them, these solutions, and savings, operating savings from implementing them. Now, there are many of the solutions that individuals can take action on. An example is rooftop solar. This is a solution most people have heard of. What we call, it's one of the usual suspects. Here you'll see on the slide how the solutions are presented. We have a ranking. We've ranked them in terms of their potential to reduce greenhouse gas concentrations. We show the projection of the number of gigatons of reduced CO2 equivalent potential they have, their net cost to implement, and operational savings of implementing them. Electric bikes. This is the most common and fastest selling alternative fuel vehicle. 31 million electric bikes were sold in 2012. 95% of those e-bikes sold in China. Telepresence, you are all familiar with because it's what we're using now. Our team at Project Drawdown is our worldwide team operates entirely over telepresence. Low flow fixtures. This slide shows a ranking of the top 20 solutions in terms of their potential to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Now, one of the surprises that we found is that energy or electricity generation solutions are only 5 of the top 20. Usually when people think of solutions to global warming, we think energy and don't look much further than that. But what we found was that of the top 20, 8 of them are related to food, what we consume, what we waste, and how we produce our food. So 2 of the most impactful solutions, one of them is reduced food waste, which came in at number 3. So this is such an impactful solution because it helps to reduce methane, which is such a powerful greenhouse gas. By reducing food waste, we reduce the amount of methane that is going into the atmosphere, but we also save all of the resources that go into growing the food, transporting it, packaging it, and everything that happens along the supply chain. So if we can reduce our food waste, be more resource conscious, more efficient in production, then we can also avoid clearing forests for additional food production. And that's where a lot of the impact comes. Plant-rich diet was ranked as number 4. So this solution involves a reduce in the demand for livestock in countries where people consume more animal protein than they need. So if we can balance out nutrition around the world so that people who are undernourished can receive sufficient nourishment, and people who are overnourished are consuming more meat than they need, we can balance that out. We can have a huge effect on greenhouse gas emissions. And this solution doesn't even go as far as suggesting that anyone adopt a vegan diet. We can have this impact if people will just reduce the amount of animal products that they consume. Another solution related to food is silvopasture. I mentioned this one because it's one that has a large impact, but it's one that many people have never heard of. Silvopasture is integrating trees into pastures. Pastures with trees sequester 5 to 10 times more carbon than pastures without trees. And the benefits available in addition to the carbon sequestration are that the animal health goes up, animals produce more meat, more milk and offspring, and the landowners are able to produce additional products in addition to grazing, such as fruit and nuts. Excuse me. Now, grazing of livestock is the world's largest land use. If only 2% of global grassland were devoted to silvopasture, it could remove and store roughly 31 billion tons of carbon dioxide between 2020 and 2050. Now, this is the same impact that Project Drawdown projects for these two other solutions combined, which are rooftop solar and commercial LED. So silvopasture could have the same impact as those two more well-known solutions. Now, this is a pie chart it's a representation of all of the solutions that are modeled in Project Drawdown. So you'll see that there are a few of them that have large slices. They have a really large impact, but we can't reach Drawdown with only those solutions. We have to take a systems approach, and there are no small solutions, no insignificant solutions. So that's why we show this chart with all of the solutions represented. Now, how has Drawdown been taken up? It's been received very well and very enthusiastically around the world. And I wanted to give some examples of what's happening in some communities, how they've taken on Drawdown. So in the city of Cincinnati, Ohio, the 2018 Cincinnati Green Plan, which is the city's climate action plan, was modeled after Drawdown. They took the same approach as Drawdown, and using Drawdown as a guide, they looked at a wide range of solutions across different sectors. And they proposed, they involved the entire community in making suggestions about solutions. Of all the suggestions that they met with residents in every neighborhood, every sector of society. Once they'd received all the solutions, they narrowed them down based on their feasibility, their cost to implement, and their benefits to the society. including their benefits beyond greenhouse gas reduction. Other communities are organizing to bring information about drawdown to their elected officials. There was recently a meeting of elected officials in the Kansas City area to educate them about drawdown. We've seen multiple community meetings, book clubs, and other events organized to spread the word about drawdown and educate the community about solutions. And what we're hearing back is that people in the public are very enthusiastic to hear about solutions, whereas they're less enthusiastic to hear more about the problem. So while we're not burying our heads in the sand about the problem, we're trying to refocus the conversation on solutions so that people can feel empowered. Now, educators have also taken up drawdown. This photo shows a teacher in Bamenda, Cameroon, who's showing the students a poster of the 100 drawdown solutions and teaching them about solutions to global warming. We've heard from educators all the way from elementary through university who are incorporating this material into their coursework and classes in a wide range of subjects, everywhere from sustainability to theater and public speaking. Now, this is another example of how people can engage with drawdown. One of our partners, the Northwest Earth Institute, who ran an eco-challenge for many years, decided to focus an eco-challenge solely on drawdown solutions. They ran it for the first time last April, and they'll be launching it again this April. Registration starts next month if you're interested in participating, but participants from around the world can register to complete challenges and actions that are directly aligned with drawdown solutions. Can participate on teams or individually. And it's a great way to not only learn about solutions, but also engage with your community. So to learn more, I recommend highly visiting drawdown.org. There's a wealth of information there, more than is contained in the book. There you can find technical summaries about each solution. If you want to do a deep dive into the research, that material is there. There's a description about the methodology that our research team used to model the solutions. There's research references, as well as plain language descriptions of all the solutions. If you follow us on social media, then you'll see posts daily about work on solutions that's happening around the world, as well as get updates about what's next for Project Drawdown. Also, welcome you and hope that you will sign up for our newsletter. If you go to drawdown.org, you'll see a box at the top of the page for a sign up for our newsletter, where we give periodic updates about what's happening with Project Drawdown and our partners. So that is my summary, and I'm happy to have a discussion with you about any questions you have. And thanks for bearing with me with my voice.
Thank you so much, Crystal. We have several questions in the chat that I'd like to bring up, and then people, folks, please feel free to continue posting questions in the chat, and I'll get to them as I can. So the first question was about the food waste and whether the emissions from food waste are mostly generated from methane from landfills, or was it like the overall energy as part of the production of food?
Yeah, it's a combination of the methane and the clearing of additional land for food production as the population grows.
Okay.
And for additional details about that, I recommend going to drawdown.org, and we have all the solutions listed there. You can actually read a technical summary that will tell you exactly how that was calculated.
And then another question was about the separation of, then the answer might be the same as what you just said, but off versus onshore wind, and why those are separate categories.
They have a different impact. Offshore wind produces much more wind energy because there is a stronger wind energy over the water. So it's because they have a different, produce different levels of energy.
Okay, great, thanks. And then next, we had a question about just people were surprised at a number of the sort of the top 20 solutions, and one of the questions related to that was why energy is, how can energy be only 4 of those top 20 when it's our use of fossil fuels is the main driver of climate change to begin with.
So of course, energy is really very important, and we need to move toward 100% renewable energy. So there's also other factors. So solutions that address the more powerful greenhouse gases like methane and refrigerants, it's really important to focus on reducing those. So those have a higher greenhouse gas impact. So solutions that reduce those have a higher potential to reduce greenhouse gases. I just lost my other. I'm sorry. The other factor is that many of the land use solutions sequester carbon. So they are very important to actually drawing carbon out of the atmosphere and reducing the concentrations. So among the drawdown solution, there are those that reduce the amount that's going up into the atmosphere, but in order to reach drawdown and start to reverse the concentrations, we need the land use solutions that will actually sequester carbon back into the earth. And that happens through the natural process of photosynthesis.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, we had a couple questions about the educating girls as one of the top solutions, and wondering whether you could talk a little bit more about what kind of education you're envisioning, or what what that would look like as a climate solution. And isn't education for both sexes, somebody said, isn't that education for both important?
Absolutely. But what both the educating girls and the family planning solutions focus on is helping the world reach the UN median population goal. So it's slowing the growth of population. And research has shown that when girls are allowed to stay in school, they tend to marry later, choose their number of pregnancies, have other opportunities. And so that's how that solution impacts emissions. It's helping to slow the population growth. And same with family planning. So with those two solutions, it doesn't mean that women and girls are responsible for solving the problem. It's just that if we can have increased gender equity, we can help reach that goal of slowing the population.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I have a question about how close we are to actually replacing refrigerants with high greenhouse gas emissions as we move towards electrification of homes and air source heat pumps that have the potential to leak.
Yeah, I don't have specific information about that, so I can't answer.
Okay. So that's something we'll all have to look into, Jerry. And okay, one more question about onshore versus offshore wind. If just wondering why offshore wind is, if offshore wind's more potent than onshore wind, why is offshore wind a smaller piece of the pie? And I'm imagining it's probably harder to put in and faces some more barriers.
Yeah, so all of the solutions were based on, so their potential to scale is based on historical trends. So the research will have taken into consideration the current adoption of the solution, as well as its potential to scale based on historical trends.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to share, Ellie has mentioned her alliance with the Pachamama Alliance in Drawdown. And Ellie, if you'd like to share the link to Pachamama in the chat, that would be awesome so people can learn more about your organization.
The Pachamama Alliance has been conducting introductions to Drawdown around the country, and many people have been introduced to our work through Pachamama Alliance. So thank you, Pachamama.
Okay, and Mana Joe says that she has a poster of Drawdown solutions and would like to share that, and we'll work on how to do that. And Peter is wondering to what extent Project Drawdown is starting to collaborate with, well, Peter's interested in African governments, but just in general, I think a broader question would be, are you working at that level or with actual governments, or are you more working with community members and citizens who will then take it to their governments?
So that is a great question. So we are a really small team, and our goal is to get this information out as broadly as possible. So our two core functions are to conduct this research and continually update it, and also to communicate it broadly. So we do have plans in our current strategic plan to focus on partnerships, mainly with cities, but we are welcoming engagement with national governments. So I know there's been some interest and exposure with European national governments, but that hasn't been a specific focus of ours yet. But yes, we are relying on citizens to bring this to their elected officials.
Yeah, which is probably easier in some places than others.
Yes, but I think an important point is that we need the collaboration and efforts of everyone, and uptake of solutions and this drawdown approach can't be done just by Project Drawdown in California.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we've got to educate as many people around the world and have them take it up and have it be a movement.
Awesome. So a question about, what is Drawdown's take on like economic growth sort of internationally and climate solutions? And do you see, this is a question that I'm sort of interpreting from Subhash, and so he's asking, how can we sustain the present economy by incorporating climate solutions? But does the Drawdown team kind of see our current rate of economic growth as an anathema or the antithesis of what we need for climate change? Or what is your position on that concept?
Actually, our research did not focus on that in the first round. Mm-hmm. But the current research and near future research will incorporate questions about economic growth.
Cool. Sorry, go ahead.
But we do advocate for a regenerative economy. We think that's possible by adopting climate solutions.
So we have a question about the temperate forest solutions. So I think one of the really interesting things about Drawdown for me is that I feel like we can share it with our international community in the Civic Ecology Lab, and there are people in different places around the world who will find solutions that resonate and that are possible in their context. But in general, it seems like it's a pretty broad. It has to be a really broad brush approach, thinking globally about these solutions. And so Ken's question is, and maybe you have an example of how people, a case of how people are doing this in their area. So Ken's question is that the temperate forest solution gives a global perspective. How can this solution be sized and evaluated for local solutions? So are there examples of how people are taking that global perspective and really addressing it locally? I think you gave that city example earlier, but maybe just reiterating that would.
Yeah, so by necessity, our research was global. And this was a 3-year research project. If we had a 20-year research project, we could focus on more on regional and local impacts, but this initial round of research was global.
Yeah.
So, and our research has not focused to date on implementation in specific local areas, because we think that people in local areas and local governments are the experts on those local areas. We don't want to be telling people in South America what to do in their area from California.
Right.
So yeah, so I don't have a specific example about that in any particular area.
Okay, and I was going to say, Ken, if you're interested, I would look at the Cornell Institute for Climate Smart Solutions site, but also the USDA Northeast Climate Hub might have some good information for you about the Northeast in general, which you could then apply to your region. Or you could contact your local extension, your local extension forestry office. I know that they're thinking about this in the Adirondacks and the Catskills, and especially because the Catskills are so deer heavy that they're not regenerating at a high enough rate. Okay, so we have a question about this is.
Let me just add something. So a feature that we are planning and actually preparing to add to our website in the first half of this year is on each solution page to add resources about where you can learn more about each solution, as well as ways to get active with each of the solutions. So we're hoping to showcase organizations that are taking action on each of the solutions. These are common questions. What's being done in my area? How can I get involved? So we actually have a team that's researching that right now.
That'll be awesome. So I just wanted to acknowledge we've had a little bit of a conversation, just a back and forth conversation about how people in the U.S., and I would extend that to the global North in general, need to make some major lifestyle changes. And a question about.
We agree.
I know, Jennifer, I think that if you search through the Drawdown, maybe Crystal can think of some off the top of her head, but I'm sure if you search through the resources on the Drawdown list that you'll find resources for those. She's looking for things that high school groups can do that in their local suburban or urban areas.
Oh, I strongly recommend the Drawdown Eco Challenge. Last year there were 7,000 participants around the world, and a group of high school students in North Carolina actually won the challenge. So it's a great way for high school students to learn about solutions and take actions, because the Eco Challenge recommends what specific steps that they can take in their communities. So I highly recommend the Drawdown Eco Challenge for high school students.
Thanks.
Someone asked if wave energy is included in wave and tidal is one of the solutions.
Yeah, it's on the website. I just looked that up. Okay. We have a question about, so I think you spoke to this a little bit earlier, that Drawdown didn't really take into economic development into account, but we have a question about sustainable development goals and specifically poverty, reducing poverty, no poverty, and implementing Drawdown. So how do you see, have you thought about, or is there anything written about Drawdown and its relation to how it might go hand in hand with reducing poverty?
Yeah, so I think in some of the introductory material in the book that's addressed, but we strongly believe that we have to bring along, we need more of a regenerative economy across the world, and that we need to bring along all communities around the world as we address these solutions. So 100% agree that we cannot continue with business as usual in terms of how we've been operating, and that goes across the board, not just with our emissions, but also the ways that we operate in our societies that generate poverty, basically. So yes, I agree.
So, okay, we've got, so us guys, you are asking really awesome questions, and I'm taking them in order as they're coming, so I'm going to try and get to as many as we can. This is a question about, and actually this relates to an earlier question that I forgot to mention, but if people are interested in terms of branding and keywords, and so the first question is, can people say that they're like Drawdown NYC? Is that okay? The second part of the question is, are there keywords or language that Drawdown really focuses on to convey information instead of that warlike language that you described in the beginning, so that ensure the continuity of your message?
So can people say Drawdown NYC, for example? Yes. We do have our logo is trademarked, so there'd be some restrictions there. You need permission to use our logo, but we hope that the word Drawdown will be taken up widely worldwide.
Great.
And then as far as keywords that replace those military words, anything that indicates regeneration or working in harmony, collaboration, those sorts of terms. So it's mainly to avoid the militaristic and violent language. And so any language that indicates that we're part of the Earth system, that we're working in harmony with the climate, and that we as humans are part of this natural systems. Any of that language we highly recommend.
So, and that goes for fear-based messaging in general?
Yes. Yeah. There are many studies that show that people become apathetic when they are constantly faced with overwhelming messages of fear. So that's what we're hoping to help shift in the conversation, global conversation.
Karen is wondering about how the global scale of Drawdown and thinking about the global scale of solutions, how do you then deal with the fact that there are countries like the United States that have just an overwhelmingly large influence on the climate given the population in comparison to other nations? So I guess like the question is, so her question was, do you take global impacts into account that certain local locations and countries are creating different amounts of emissions? And so wind in the United States will have a different effect on the United States switching to 100% solar will have a different effect than Nigeria switching to 100% wind or solar.
We we haven't done that in the first round of research. We've looked at the picture globally, and that was because of the scope. If we looked like specifically at certain countries, the scope of the research project would have taken much longer. So initially, we've looked at global data. It includes data from different regions, but we haven't been able to get geographically specific yet. So our current research team is working on some like sort of pilot studies of specific regions and countries. But that's just now getting started. So of course, the impacts of the solutions will be different in every country, that we recognize. And that's one of the reasons why we don't think that we can be telling people which solutions they should implement or prioritize in their communities, because they know best what's happening in their communities.
Okay. So you had some conversation about trade-offs of, for example, if you need to put in a, I know one of the big issues in the Catskills in upstate New York is there's a big push for solar and renewable and wind, but people don't actually want those things in their community and feel like it's destroying the viewshed and would actually destroy intact forests. And so the trade-off there's an interesting trade-off there. And somebody mentioned that you'd like to see more research on that.
So I think what this shows, the range of questions and how do we implement Drawdown in a way that is optimal, it shows what can happen when people start to focus on solutions. All these questions come up and we get more minds involved, and we recruit more intellect, more creativity. We get our experts focused on how to solve these problems. This is exactly what we hope to will be generated. So in this, what our team did was to try to answer the question, is it possible for us to reach Drawdown? And so this was, an initial attempt at answering a question. And of course, it raises more questions. That's exactly what should happen. And we're now developing partnerships with universities around the world to expand the number of scientists who are researching and these questions and modeling solutions impact. And we hope to develop a very large research collaborative to be focused on Drawdown. That's already in the works. So this is just the beginning, and we hope that more and more people, organizations, governments, businesses, universities, everyone will get involved in answering these questions.
And it seems like we've got several people from the Hudson Valley and the Route 87 corridor in New York State, and Mana Joe has just suggested maybe you could put some way to get in contact with you so that anybody who's interested in Hudson Valley issues and the Hudson Valley follow-up to Drawdown Learn, which was a conference earlier in the fall. Thank you. So Mana just put her email in the chat, and if you're from the Hudson Valley and interested in in Drawdown in the Hudson Valley and surrounding regions, then Mana Joe can put you in contact with a bunch of people, it sounds like, which is awesome. Okay, are there other questions that folks have for Crystal? Crystal, maybe you could talk a little bit about how people, so there's drawdown.org, there's @Project Drawdown. Are you sharing out the Drawdown Learn network, or is there a way, can we share a link in the chat box for people who are interested in joining that network?
Sure. You can email info@drawdown.com.
Okay. And that's to, if you're interested in becoming part of that Google group that,
If you are an educator, yes.
okay. Okay. Okay, great. Glad you enjoyed it, Janelle. Are there any other remaining questions? So I was really interested in the silvopasture one, Crystal, because I was just thinking about upstate New York and how much dairy we have up here, but also we have a ton of forest. And so thinking, and I know that Cooperative Extension has been working on this. I know somebody in Cooperative Extension who's done a lot of work with silvopasture in New York State, but I was just wondering about the conversion of pasture lands to forest, and where are there areas that have done that really well? Like, is there a case of a region that has done that well?
Yes, Central America.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. That's good to know, because it seems like it would have potential here, which I know what people are already looking into. All right. Any more questions from you folks? We've had a really great discussion. People had lots and lots of great questions, and I hope that I tried to get them all.
So I think one thing I'd like to emphasize is that everyone can be involved. You do have something to contribute. You do have something to add. Even if it's just talking to the people in your family or in your neighbors or any groups you belong to about solutions, that takes us further along the path. And some people are positioned to do more. They are business leaders, or they have some other area of influence. We need everyone active in their sphere of influence.
Thank you. So if we don't have any, it looks like people are starting to sign off, and if we don't have any more, oh, Kathy, I forgot that question. It was the climate smart communities question. Okay, I think that there are people who are working on this already, and Crystal can correct me if I'm wrong, but how can drawdown solutions be funded in the US, and do they line up well with programs for local resilience? So in New York State, we have the Climate Smart Communities program run through the DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and I know there have to be people who are starting to work on these things together.
Yeah, I don't know specifically about that program, but yes, people around the US, around the world, are working on solutions. So Project Drawdown didn't invent these solutions. We took a look at the world, at what was already being done. So yes, investigate in your community. So much is being done. We just need to provide support for it.
And I think probably, Kathy, if you are interested, I'm assuming that it's the Hudson Valley crew who has been if you look up the Climate Smart Communities information on the DEC's website, there's a whole description of what you need to be a climate smart community, and a lot of that involves shifts in energy use at the municipal level. So Drawdown would definitely connect well with that. So Ellie, yes, this presentation, we will be putting that, we'll be uploading this and sharing it as a YouTube link. And for our Chinese audience, I'll be working with our Chinese postdoc and researchers in our lab to make that available on WeChat. And we have one more question about sustainable development goals, and the fact that growing food or food issues or food solutions are there are a lot of them in the top 20 solutions. So how do these align with the zero hunger? How might these align with the Sustainable Development Goal 2, which is zero hunger?
So as we increase efficiencies around food, we can feed more people. So I think it can align well, and we'll see how people who are positioned to affect this change will come up with solutions that address reducing food waste and feeding more people. But they should, yes, I mean, there's no reason why they should not align. They should absolutely align.
Great, thank you.
We want to create a better world as we reduce greenhouse gases. So as we address climate, we need to create a better world overall for everyone.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you everybody for coming out. We will be, again, this has been recorded. We'll be sharing it. And just want to make sure I'm not missing anything that just came in. Yeah, thanks everybody. It's a really great conversation, and we'll be sending out information in the next couple weeks with what I hope will be a whole schedule of webinars this spring on climate change from multidisciplinary perspectives. So thank you so much, Crystal, for being here with us from the West Coast early in the morning when you're losing your voice. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for bearing with me, and thank you so much, everyone. I enjoyed it. Thank you for spending your time to learn about Drawdown.
All right, folks. Well, we will hope to see you on Zoom in the near future, and have a great rest of your evening if you're across the world in China, and a great rest of the day if you're in other parts of the world. All right. So long, everybody.